and remove these elite banking interests, and that these people do not want surgery performed, but that it would be better for the wider civilization. Is there going to be a removal of these elite banking interests, do you think?
No, I don't think so, because we don't have the patriots of the founding of this country. And everybody's more interested in their own well-being and protection. The citizenry gave the Constitution away for protection against a perceived threat. Threat can be both disease as it can be Al-Qaeda. So if the people would give away their constitutional right, therefore the history and strength of their country, if they'll stand in line like sheep to get groped at an airport, okay, when you got a blue-eyed, blonde-haired grandma, 80 years old, and they're groping her in her wheelchair, it just doesn't make any sense. So to allow somebody to physically handle you, take your shoes off, so you feel protected on an airplane, okay, that is the way the citizenry will act and will continue to act. And any uprising of any small groups will be put down violently as cults or as far-right, possibly even terrorist training camps. So, no, those who run the show will continue to run the show because we're sheeple, not people. Now, there's individuals who will be very, very bothered by what I just said, but if they sit back and think about it, maybe their 25 guys aren't like that, but 2.5 million near them are. I mean, militia now is equal to terrorism. That's the final answer to that question. So the guys that run it are going to continue to run it, and there's no way of getting rid of it, but what's going to happen is what's already happened: Asia rises, the West falls.
Is that going to be somewhat better to have a force maybe going against these?
I don't think the force will go against them. The force will go for themselves, okay? Now, if going for yourself is going against, then yes, that's correct. But no, there'll be no confrontation between people want money now. They don't want war. That may not be true of Russia.
Let's talk gold for just a minute, and we'll come back because I have so many questions for you, derivatives, et cetera. But let's talk about gold.
Sure.
You've talked about $1,650 as a target.
$1,650 has been a target since 2000. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be dead wrong. It's going higher.
Okay.
I think people better allege the targets of Al Fields than of Jim Sinclair. Basically, I wanted to take people to the first price of highest probability to do my duty. The first price of highest probability. 1650 is not the last price of potentiality.
You saw the mania in 1980, and you were able to target the highs there, which was kind of amazing.
No, I just got sober one day before everybody else.
Right, but it was on time.
Yeah, it was.
And my question to you is, living through that mania, here we go again. Are we going to have another mania this time around?
The top was engineered in 1980. It was engineered by the means of engineering it was sellers only on the COMEX. It was a fledgling time in gold because, in truth, the problems then were not as great. They weren't 1% of 1% of what's going on now, which we'll talk about later in the size of the derivative market. You know what that was? 1980 was the first act of a show. We've done it now. This is the final act of that drama.
This derivatives disaster that you're speaking about, is this going to be the gunpowder?
To prevent it, and in order to paste it over, and in order to do with the political thing of pushing the problem tomorrow and hoping somebody else will be in the administration by then, be it the same party as you or another party, is what's going to do the dollar and is doing the dollar. So the result of this is that, yes, the derivatives that sit out there in a number of 1,144 trillion, that the BIS announced and then adopted a new computer measure called value to maturity, and therefore reduced the size by more than 50%, is the terrible fear that will not be allowed to come to fruition. And therefore, in order to not allow it to come to fruition, just go back to the last paragraph of Greenspan's speech in 1997, because that's the option that has been taken. And now, once taken, can't be untaken. Pandora's box of quantitative easing, a really neat name for printing of money, has sustained the unsustainable, meaning it's kept away something that every day threatens to collapse. So any idea that there's a practical method of draining this liquidity, which will be the main discussion of the upcoming G20, is an exercise in absolutely impractical futility. So all you need to do is reread your opening presentation, because Greenspan said it. Protecting the system against total collapse will result in the following. And that means infinite expansion, as much as is required, let's call that infinite expansion, of money and credit is going to result in hyperinflation, of a reserve currency of the West. Now, the Chinese have been moving out of dollars constantly. I mean, you get, I would say, an average of a few billion a week in the purchase of other items. Take a look at the currency they're purchased in. And bear in mind that the talking heads never do their homework. I've heard so many times on financial TV that the amount of dollars held by the Chinese is $2 trillion. Like the dickens it is. The highest point was $800 billion. And they've been diversifying for a considerable length of time. And just like they had no gold 1 week, and the next week they had a huge amount of gold, people think that they have $800 billion, and you're going to find out it's $400 so fast you won't believe it. And $400 billion compared to the $12 trillion that's been wasted trying to keep derivatives from collapsing. And you've got to know the Chinese have no dollar problem whatsoever. So all of this is contained in the last sentence of the presentation you opened with. That's what's been opted for. That's what's coming. That's the problem that will never occur. But the attempt to, and the means of it never occurring is, it's going to be inflated away just like you inflate away debt. You're going to inflate away that risk. The outrageous nature of this is that it's so profitable to the banks and institutions that they're still doing it. Except now the popular product of the day is credit derivatives, credit default derivatives. And yeah, they may work from today till next week. But what happens if a corporation doesn't go broke slow, but just keels over? Well, the answer is it's got to be saved. Why? Because if it isn't, the credit default derivative will implode on that item, and if it implodes on one, it implodes on all. And they've done about $22 trillion of those recently. Right through this whole debacle, they've been selling those things like hotcakes.
Does it surprise you, Jim, because there's some very bright people in the deflation camp, but does it surprise you that they missed that the key to this whole debate was right there in Greenspan's speech from 12, 13 years ago?
Well, because if you think those guys are dopes, guess who the dope is, okay? So if you think they don't know what's going on and aren't acting in a pre-thought-out manner for a purpose and reason, and what you need to do is understand the audit trail of their decision, and you write them off as criminals or idiots, the idiot is you. Most of them just would dismiss that in a minute and a half, would go back to the prejudicial thinking that inflation is the CPI and prices, and you need business activity to create prices and therefore go off the deep end the wrong way.
Right, and I always believed, and it sounds like you're confirming this for me, Jim, but I always believed that Greenspan speech, which wasn't covered by anybody, right? Not by the Wall Street Journal, not by anybody, and it was done over in Belgium, just sort of quietly. But I always took that speech, Jim, as a disclosure.
Just keep it. Just put that down as the preamble to the position, because that's the way you should start every show, reading that, and then don't listen to the person you want to interview because it's all done.
Well, it's good to know.
In other words, you've told everybody everything there is to know. There is no more to know.
Well, I harped on that for 6 or 7 years, all the way into the derivatives blow-up.
But who listens?
Well, yeah, right.
Look, I sit down 5-6 hours a day to crank out both, original essays as well as reviews of the news. And who listens? Maybe 5%. But people read, and they just go their merry way. They still have their... they still think the FDIC is going to take care of them. And, they still think that once the consumer starts spending, everything is going to be fine. And they don't understand what's happened, and they don't care to understand what's happened. They listen, but they don't act.
You've chosen to be in a state of service with all that you are doing on your website and helping the endless list of followers that seem, during some periods of weakness, to need a lot of hand-holding, right, to get them through those dark times. Why the decision to help so many others during this gold cycle?
A Jesus Christ complex. Okay, my brand of insanity. Why did I ever do that? Okay, I don't know. The only thing I can say is Mother Teresa liked to touch people to make them happy, and Attila the Hun liked killing people. There's no virtue in this. It's just what you happen to like. Okay. So there's no virtue here. It's a subject that I understand. Probably I like talking about it, and maybe I like danger. I don't know.
Is the general public still not involved in the gold market?
No, not at all.
What will it take to bring them in the metals market in earnest? Help me on that.
I don't know if they really will ever arrive, okay, because by the time they get the message, they don't have enough money left to buy gold. I did an NPR thing on retirement, and I said, hey, buy gold? Are you kidding? These people can buy food, okay? They're worried about their rent. Gold is a non-subject. All it is an alarm bell for them, but, it's something blaring away saying do something, but they can't do anything about it. Right now, do you think anybody in the gold community has anything to do with the gold price? They're all committed. They're just bystanders. That's all they are. And the traders, they last about 6 months if they're really